Hey, everybody. Little coffee accident, change in jacket. Good to see all of you again. I'm pleased to welcome my friend Senator Roy Blunt from Missouri. He's chair of the Republican Policy Committee and ranking member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health and Human Services, Education, and related agencies. He's also a cancer survivor himself. Senator, it's great to see you. Let me just start with the big news. You know, I think President Biden put out the longest tribute I've ever seen to someone in a tribute to Francis Collins, the director of the National Institutes of Health. Is the feeling of support and tribute to Dr. Collins felt across the aisle? What are your thoughts?
You know, I think it is. He's become a really great advisor, a great friend on these issues. I chaired the committee that funds NIH for the past 6 years. And of course, we've got an equally divided committee now. But, you know, Francis Collins is the only director of NIH to serve more than one president. And, you know, starting with President Obama through the Trump years and now into this first year of President Biden. I think he's got great relationships with members of the Congress, and his credibility in the scientific community is extraordinary. So he brought real skills to this job, though this is a job that particularly over the last 2 years, I'm sure has been challenging, a lot of work from home, but working from home maybe 100 hours a week in some of these weeks. One of the things we did, Steve, with Dr. Collins was come up with this idea on testing to where the NIH did something they'd never done before and essentially created a Shark Tank, which is what Senator Alexander from Tennessee and I suggested they do. And the Shark Tank produced incredible results. The companies that came through the fledgling groups, as well as companies that came through the Shark Tank, are currently producing more than 2 million tests today that wouldn't have been produced otherwise, and 100% of all the home tests. I think that really sort of launched NIH into a new level to where you could be a very active partner looking at something that needs to be done and has promised to be done right now. And in all of the changes we're seeing in healthcare generally and cancer specifically, developing that potential when you see something that has unusual promise to grab a hold of it, become not just we'll give you a 5-year grant and we'll see where you are a couple of years from now, and then we'll get a final report in 5 years. But the potential that Francis created during COVID to be a hands-on partner could be something that NIH and HHS can both benefit from for a long time. And we're seeing such incredible change in both cancer research and the things that are being approved to fight cancer, that this is a very optimistic time, I think, to look toward the future and to look back at the last 5 or 10 years and see the real change that cancer is so many more times now a survivable thing than it would have thought to have been in the past. And frankly, NIH and the Cancer Institute at NIH has had a lot to do with that.
Thank you for that. You know, I know that Senator, you're one of the senators that's approached both sides. You've been very, very supportive of looking at what those foundations are, those platforms, mechanisms that support smart cancer research and shaking it up and finding new ways to think about it. But you've also been a big advocate of, I would call, building stronger relationships for care, for people, for access. And I know you've been on both sides of this. And, you know, I just spoke with Congresswoman Bonnie Watson-Coleman, who was also a cancer survivor. And she said, you know, one of the key things out there is to get routine contact between the medical profession and people, you know, so that it's routine. I know that you have been worried that under current law, insurance companies are required to provide no-cost coverage for breast cancer, but not diagnostic testing. What are the wobbly parts of the screening and testing, the interaction with the American public that we need to fix?
Well, I do think we need to be sure that what we're doing really has real-world practical application. So Senator Shaheen and I have introduced legislation to where not only would you have to have screening, but if diagnostic testing was suggested necessary by that screening, that the insurance company also has to cover that. Often the breast cancer screening creates understanding that you might have breast cancer, but unless you can afford the diagnostics, are willing to go through that process on your own, you might not be able to find out if you have it or not. So that's the kind of thing we need to work out of the system. Every screening wouldn't require diagnostics, but it's possible that most likely positive screenings would. And so we need to keep up with the kinds of things we can do. And what we found out in so many cancers in the last decade is early intervention is more likely than not to produce a good result. And you don't need to be putting these things off or wondering how you can come up with the personal money to find out what your screening suggested. And we're seeing so many things happen, Steve, so quickly. Immunotherapy, when I first started chairing the committee 7 years ago, there was one study going on actively in the United States at the University of Pennsylvania at Philadelphia. It had about 70 participants in it. It was leukemia focused. But this whole new concept, well, we're going to do something to your blood so that it has capacity to fight back. One of the things I think we've learned is that everybody has within them fighting capacity to these things that attack us. The problem is that without some kind of assistance, an attack like an attack from cancer quickly overcomes your natural resistance. But with immunotherapy, we've had great success in figuring out in all the blood cancers, the potential at least, that your CAR T cells, that you can figure out how to fight back yourself in a way if your body can get the necessary upgrade to that fighting back capacity. So something that didn't exist 5 years ago or 7 years ago is on the checkoff list for so many cancers. And then FDA by itself, I think, has approved 30 different treatments for cancer in the last year. So we're seeing things really result, and many of them a direct result of NIH research and the taxpayers of America deciding to make this a real priority, and that priority is paying off.
You talk about technology. One of the things that does intrigue me, particularly as we're watching, the Theranos trial sort of do this. But next to that flop, you see incredible leaps in diagnostics and testing someone's blood for real and being able to diagnose cancers and other potential pathogens that are part of there, and then looking at how you respond to that. Our genetics-based work, as you just laid out, is our infrastructure, our regulatory infrastructure, from your perspective, keeping up with the advances in technology? Or is it, because I hear this frustration out there about the speed at which some of these therapies are coming online.
Well, I think there is frustration, and that's one of the reasons that the Congress has looked at right to try legislation, where if you're at a certain point in your fight against a disease like cancer, and there's a trial going on that you'd want to be part of, and your options, frankly, without that trial aren't very good anyway, be part of that trial. But I think FDA should be able to develop technologies that allow it to keep up more quickly with the new things that are being sent to FDA, the new treatments, the new diagnostics that are being developed. And if you do have, again, one of these breakthrough moments, and it takes 2 or 3 years before people can really benefit from it, lives are lost that maybe could have been changed differently. So I think all of us would like to see FDA work more quickly, including people at FDA.
Real quick, Senator, I was moved by something, but I'd like to hear a little bit more on your Twitter feed. The Super Sam Foundation in Fulton, Missouri. Tell us about Super Sam.
Well, Super Sam was a young man who didn't win his fight against cancer, but he did it valiantly. And his parents and his friends established this foundation. And, really what has driven me to prioritize health research more than having had cancer myself is the stories of families, the stories of people. We've made real commitments to childhood cancer that we hadn't made in research in the past. That's another place where Super Sam has made a difference. I was able to meet him while he was still fighting that fight. I saw his mother in the hallway outside my office in the Russell building just the other day, and we had a chance to talk to her, to visit for a minute. And then she had some some teenage volunteers with her who were following in the footsteps of Super Sam to try to keep that foundation alive, to work with other families, to do things that encourage people to fight back valiantly. And in some cases now, I think we're at a point where part of that fight is, if I can just fight a little longer, these advances are coming so quick that I think there's a sense that it's almost never a moment when you have to give up until the fight is lost, because something might happen that makes a big difference for you. I had a family that lost two young sons because they had bone marrow challenges, and we've tried to do things that have made it easier with federal funding to find those matches for bone marrow when you're trying to do what needs to be done there. That same family, by the way, had the great good fortune, and so did the two kids they adopted, to be able to raise two kids, but they're not the lives that were lost. That doesn't replace anybody, but it's a family that was committed to be a family. First, to do everything they could to save the lives of the children they had, and then to do everything they could to create purposeful, loving lives for children that needed those lives. So, you see lots of things going on in the country that give us hope for the future. But we're seeing the opportunity for CRISPR technology, for building on Dr. Collins' great leadership in genetic research to figure out how you could early on determine something that is going to produce a problem. And we're getting closer and closer to the ability to intervene so that particular problem never occurs. It's just like back to the immunotherapy example. Yeah. Those people are protected in all likelihood from that particular challenge for the rest of their life. And now you have to see what other things you can help them deal with as challenges come along. And by the way, as we've increased funding for cancer, we've seen a huge increase as young researchers have been encouraged to stay in the field because they begin to get grants. We've seen a huge increase in grant applications. So we want to be sure that we're continuing to provide the funding for as many of those likely successful ideas that are out there as we possibly can.
Senator, last little zinger. I mean, I know that you have worked with Senator Shaheen on breast cancer and various programs there. You work with Senator Debbie Stabenow on really moving the needle on mental health care support. You're working across the aisle on these big health care issues. I know you've also supported a DARPA, for our audience, a Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency style outfit in the NIH, and ARPA-H, if you will, which the Biden administration. But my question to you is, talking to President Biden, whom you know so well, what can they do better in terms of aligning both parties, finding that overlap in healthcare policy? I don't want to be Pollyannish about it, but are there areas that are undeveloped in this space that you would recommend to the Biden administration that they push on?
Well, I think, one of the things about the structure of the Senate is that it only in the rarest occasions can one side do whatever they want to do by themselves. Having great partners on the other side has made a real difference. I think Senator Stabenow and I have worked together in a way that has really made a difference in treating mental health like all other health. President Biden, obviously, with his commitment to the fight against cancer, is also looking at a way that we can make that commitment like NIH made, frankly, during the COVID challenge on testing, to become a more active and immediate partner when you really have a promising potential out there. I think we need to talk about our successes. We need to make those, find a place where both parties can work together so that people are more likely to embrace the successes you do have. You know, one of the frustrations I think many of us have had on the vaccine is the reluctance of some people to accept that just because it was allowed to become politicized rather than be appreciated for the incredible success it was in the short time that Operation Warp Speed created a vaccine with new technology, again, that was much more individualized than just giving you the disease, but giving your system a way to fight back and smother that disease in ways that it didn't have the kind of impact it would have otherwise. So I hope that we can work with ARPA-H. I'm frankly a little bit concerned as Dr. Collins leaves NIH that one of the patterns we were looking at needs to have someone, the president will find someone quickly to step up, and we'll continue to work with the White House to see if we can't bring that defense advanced research that we've been doing virtually since World War II in an extraordinary way in a partnership, also bring the potential to that to health research, to where we partner in a way that reaches a conclusion quicker than it would otherwise, just like we did with COVID testing within the last year.
Well, let me just say this. Thank you so much, Senator Blunt from Missouri. But let me tell my audience, Senator Blunt is not only chairman of the Senate Republican Policy Committee, not only ranking member of the Senate Rules Committee, not only ranking member of the Appropriations Subcommittee on Labor, Health, and Human Services and Education, but I've been to a few inaugurations that he's basically co-run or run. And I just don't know, because I know you're retiring in 2022. I don't really know what's going to happen without you up there for the next inauguration of whichever president comes up. So, Senator Roy Blunt, thank you for what you've done in healthcare policy and for your time today, but just want to say thanks for some great inaugurations. Well, that brings us to the end of our program. You know, when it comes to the cancer story and tech and diagnostics and screenings, you know, one of the big players is going to be Illumina, and Illumina helps support these conversations today, and I want to give them a big thank you. I want to thank all of you attendees for supporting this program, and if you want to go back and share these videos and watch them again and again and again, they'll all be up on our website at The Hill shortly. Thanks so much for joining us. Be healthy, be well. I'm Steve Clemons.